The basic principles of the Constitution. Episode 9. Episode 9. Alright, I'm going to list out the 5 basic principles that make up our U.S. Constitution. First up, we got popular sovereignty, then limited government, separation of powers, checks and balances, and federalism. Guess what? I'm going to go into each one of those in detail right now. Popular sovereignty, by definition, means that the government's authority comes from the people. So this also is aligned with a democracy, right? So that's probably why it's the first basic principle of our Constitution, because the power comes from the people. An example of popular sovereignty in the Constitution can be found in the preamble of the Constitution, where it states, "We, the people of the United States, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America." That was the preamble, or part of it. Then comes limited government. And I believe that I can't spell, first off. There should only be one T there. Erase this T. You are not there. Wow, Seth. Okay, so the government can't truly serve its people if it has unlimited power. An example of limited power in the Constitution can be found in Section 9, Article 1, which states that the powers, what it states is the powers that the federal government does not have, meaning the central national government does not have a certain amount of powers, and all of those powers are listed right here in Section 9, Article 1. Moving on to separation of powers. Separation of powers prevents any one branch from having too much power. Example of this comes from Article 1 of the Constitution. Article 1 lists out powers granted to the legislative branch. Article 2 lists out powers granted to the executive branch. And, that's right, we have an Article 3, lists out powers of the judicial branch. So, each of the 3 branches have its own powers, and they're separate so that not any one branch can have too much power. Fourth in the lineup is checks and balances. Checks and balances divides power within the government. So, examples of this would be veto power. Veto. That's a T right there, guys. Veto power. Also, judicial review. Okay, so what veto power is, it's the power of the president to reject legislation proposed by Congress. So, President Obama can currently reject any legislation proposed by Congress. Then there's also judicial review, which is the power of the courts to decide if a law and other government actions are valid under the Constitution. So that means that the Supreme Court can decide if something is constitutional or not, and that's called judicial review. And last up, we have federalism, which is where the powers are balanced between national and state governments. And we've already actually talked about federalism a little bit when we talked about systems of governments. We talked about federal, confederal, and unitary systems. Well, we're going to focus on federal because that's what we have here. Examples of federalism would be negotiating treaties, coining money, and engaging in war. All 3 of those can only be done by the national government. States cannot negotiate treaties, they cannot make money, and they can definitely not engage in war by themselves. It's all in how you mix the two, and it starts just when